I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Because breaking the wheel always turns out so well for people in fantasy. Hey you geeks, as we're ramping up towards Stormlight 5's big release next December, Sanderson has been hinting that we are finally going to get answers in this book for the big driving questions of the series. What caused the Recreance, or rather, what spooked the Radiants and their Spren so much that they decided to just walk away from their oaths and their powers? And what does this have to do with ba-ado-mishram? The answer, I propose, is Ishar's deep-seated fear of change and how that pushed him to try and stop the seasons by devastating their Spren. Full spoiler warning on all released books of the Stormlight archive as I dive into the origins of Ishar's trauma with change and how that kept on getting rekindled every time a new season or desolation arose, and why in particular it meant that he had, in his mind, to eradicate one Spren in particular off the face of Roshar. You fall in flame. The destruction of Ashen was, in part at least, begun by Ishar, who was himself tricked by Odium into experimenting with the surges. Among these surges were the Dawn Shards, or at least the Dawn Shard of Change, which we know was found by Risen in her novella The Dawn Shard. And Honor is the one who tells us via the Stormfather that it was the Dawn Shard that did Ashen in. Honor raved, speaking of the Dawn Shards, ancient weapons used to destroy the Tranquiline Halls. Honor promised that Surgebinders would do the same to Roshar. And thus it was the power of change that resulted in humankind's expulsion from paradise.
And now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Thus humans like Ash fell from the sky to Roshar, where the survivors, including the soon-to-be heralds, learned one very important lesson. Change is dangerous. Thus, the heralds formed the Oath Pact to stop this destructive change from happening ever again. So you can imagine how terrified they would be after returning a few centuries later to find not only that they had failed to prevent destruction in general, but their very action of preservation sparked new change in the form of the Knights Radiant. As Syl told Kaladin, "The honor blades are what we are based on, Kaladin. Honor gave these to men, and those men gained power from them. Spren figured out what he'd done, and we imitated it. With this sword, someone can do what you do, but without the checks a Spren requires." These powers, although similar to what the heralds can do, are not the same, and from the subtext of Ash's tirade in Rhythm of War, we know they feared them. And the heralds probably had good reason to fear, in part, as Dalinar saw in his first vision with Noadon, that even Proto-Knights Radiants bonded to Spren could be forces of terrible destruction. "Our own natures destroy us," Noadon said. Alakavish was a Surgebinder. He should have known better, and yet the Nahel bond gave him no more wisdom than an ordinary man. Alas, not all Spren are as discerning as Honor Spren. So it makes sense that Ishar, as the bondsmith, would try and bind these changes honorably at first, though admittedly in a very brutal manner. But as for Ishi Ilin, his was the part most important at their inception. He readily understood the implications of surges being granted to men, and caused organization to be thrust upon them, as having too great a power. He let it be known that he would destroy each and every one, unless they agreed to be bound by precepts and laws. If Ishar was at one point okay with the Radiants existing so long as they were bound by oaths, then why change his mind at one point and allow, if not encourage, the Recreance to occur? Well, for starters, he was, by that point, probably stark raving mad.
I create life! And I destroy it.
Ishar, in his madness, could begin to see Spren manifesting in the physical world as harbingers of not just change, but danger. And the most dangerous of all would be those Sprens bonded to Radiance of the high ideals. As Syl said herself, as Kaladin approached the fourth ideal, I think the closer I get to your world, the more I can become, the more I can change. And such a change Ishar could not abide, so he had to set about to end the orders of Knights Radiant, and while he's at it, possibly end all change itself, as change is what brought about the fall from the Tranquiline Halls, which in turn brought about
Seasons of love.
According to Milton's Paradise Lost, man's expulsion from paradise had two consequences I find particularly relevant to the plight of Roshar. The first being the introduction of seasons. Seriously, before an angel even gets to Eden to boot out the squatters, Milton's god orders the seasons to begin changing. The sun had his first precept so to move, so shine, as might affect the earth with cold and heat, scarce tolerable, and from the north to call decrepit winter, and from the south to bring solstial summer's heat. I'm still weirded out how Roshar lacks an axial tilt, which is what causes Earth's seasons. And we have a paraphrased word of Brandon to confirm this. Temperature stays fairly constant because of the lack of an axial tilt. Despite not having traditional seasons, they have a concept of seasons which might have come from somewhere else. Due to the paraphrased nature of this word, it's not precisely clear if Roshar has always lacked an axial tilt, or if this is a more recent development. Slivers of shards are known in the Cosmere to just move whole planets on a whim, so it's not inconceivable for a bondsmith, for example, to just knock Roshar off its rocker and see what happens. This lack of an axial tilt creates a constant climate of slime, muck, and humidity, about which Wit is the only character to really complain because he's really the only character who knows better.
Boo! Rubbish! Filth! Slime! Muck! Boo! Boo! Boo!
For Rosharians, this is all they have ever known throughout their entire history, which, incidentally, begins at the time of the Recreance. However, this fact of their nature, this stasis, is not reflected in their natural laws or Vorin philosophy. In Vorinism, pure things were said to be symmetrical, and all things had an opposite. Not to mention, everything has a spren.
Seasons go and seasons come, bring the corn and bear the fruit.
If Roshar's nature is symmetrical, then shouldn't it have symmetrical seasons? Shouldn't these seasons be big, encompassing concepts that create large, powerful spren that dominate a landscape like a season does? If so, where are these spren?
Where's the band? Where's the band?
Perhaps 3 of them were given the task of being bondsmiths spren to the Knights Radiant. Let's start with the Night Watcher. She's now known for giving out boons and curses, but always in alignment with the intent of cultivation. All things must be cultivated. What I take from you will grow back, eventually. This is part of the cost. I control all things that can be grown, nurtured. With all of her emphasis on growth, even if that growth is strange, she seems to be an ideal candidate for the spread of spring. Moving on to the Stormfather, Brandon has said that the high storms of Roshar were inspired in part by the thunderstorms of Midwestern summers. So I think he's an ideal spread of summer. The Stormfather said, "I must blow. I must make this land exist. I carry seeds. I birth plants. I make the landscape permanent with creme. I provide light. Without me, Roshar withers." Both Spren are clearly dangerous and not precisely under control even when bonded. But their net contribution to Roshar is positive. They give life. So, where is their opposite? Where is the Spren of destruction? Where is the Spren of autumn, which is so often affiliated on Earth with death? And that, according to Milton, was the primary outcome of man's expulsion from paradise, of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree whose mortal taste brought death into the world. So where is the Spren of fall? Even if Roshar never had Earth-like seasons, their underlying philosophy of opposition, symmetry, and change could have been grounded in the nature of the desolations themselves. These desolations had a sort of rhythm, beginning with a period of growth and renewal, and always ending with terrible destruction. In the past, Jasnah said, the desolation, the coming of the Voidbringers, was supposedly always marked by a return of the heralds to prepare mankind. They would train the Knights Radiant, who would experience a rush of new members. The desolations were literally caused by the return of the heralds infused, the gods of their respective peoples, returning from damnation to Roshar, much like Tammuz and Persephone would be heralds of new weather in ancient Mesopotamia.
Who makes the summer sun shine bright? That's right, Persephone!
For the Mesopotamians, having their gods with them was always a sign of summer, whereas on Roshar, it might be a matter of perspective.
Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York.
If the Night Watcher and the Stormfather were the Sprens of spring and summer respectively, their perception could have been changed by the people living on Roshar at this time to include this time of early desolation and return of the heralds infused. But after the gods have given out their boons to their people, terrible destruction always followed. And this period of devastation, desolation, doesn't seem to have a Spren in modern Roshar. Now, if you've seen my Mythic Virgins of the Unmade video, you'll recognize Tammuz's Hebrew name as Ado, which of course is the middle name of Roshar's most wanted unmade, ba-ado-mishram.
We're on the case and we're chasing her through history.
Ba-ado-mishram was originally made as the Spren of fall, autumn, the season. But, based on perception and odium's influence, was unmade to be the very Spren of desolation itself, and she became the embodiment of all of Ishar's fears, that change led to terrible destruction. So he first tries to stop it in a new way at a Harietia. Ishar believes that so long as there is one of us still bound to the Oath Pact, it may be enough. There is a chance we might end the cycle of desolations. Everyone on modern Roshar seems to regard the false desolation brought about by ba-ado-mishram as some sort of a fluke. But if we look at it from a seasonal perspective, it's really the centuries following a Harietiam where the sprens of spring and summer ruled unchallenged that are the aberration.
Oh, my sweet summer child, what do you know about fear?
Ba-ado-mishram was just trying to be herself and do her job to reduce civilization to ashes, as Yasna Kholin explains. In the aftermath of each desolation, mankind was broken, great cities in ashes, industry smashed. Each time, knowledge and growth were reduced to an almost prehistoric state. What honor and cultivation gave, ba-ado-mishram would take away, reduce it to ashes, leave mankind stranded, naked, covered in sores. Like Job, who unknowingly channels good Voran natural philosophy of change, symmetry, and opposition when he says, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away." Now, for the good of the fandom, I translated Job's statement word for word back into Hebrew and found that
Adonai noten, Adonai lokech misham
is a workable translation. Considering that Adon lekesh mishem sounds darn close to Ado-mishram, I'm changing my prediction regarding the meaning of ba-ado-mishram's name. I had once theorized it meant she who loosens, but now I think it means she who takes away. Notice how the Hebrew word for giving is also Natan, the name of a Rosharan epic kingdom. It is too poetically perfect for Ishar or his radiant minions to take a stand against the changes of Roshar, the give and take of the gods, by standing in the land of the gift Nat-Natan to destroy it and ba-ado-mishram in one fell blow. The Recreance and her capture may have stopped the desolations, the seasons, and the spread of their changes for a while, but there was one thing Ishar could not stop: the beat. And that is where our story begins. Thanks for watching. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear them. Also, like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more. Bye!